On a quiet morning in Barcelona in 1912, a boy named Juan Pujol Garcia was born into a world that would one day be consumed by global conflict. From the outset, Juan was ordinary in appearance, unassuming, and in many ways overlooked. Yet, hidden beneath the veneer of normalcy lay a mind that could navigate webs of deceit, the subtle manipulations of human perception, and the quiet courage required to change the course of history. Few in his lifetime could have guessed that this unremarkable man would one day become the linchpin of one of the most audacious deceptions of the Second World War. By the early 1940s, the world had already plunged into chaos. Europe was under the iron grip of the Third Reich, its armies advancing across the continent with relentless precision. For the Allies, the task of reclaiming occupied Europe was fraught with peril, requiring not only brute force but also the subtlety of intelligence, the unseen art of misinformation. It was within this perilous landscape that Juan Pujol would step onto the stage, not as a soldier armed with rifles or tanks, but as a master of illusion, capable of shaping the very decisions of Hitler's generals without ever firing a shot. Juan's early adult years were unremarkable, defined by failed ventures and modest employment. Yet, these failures would shape his character, instilling a resourcefulness and resilience that would become invaluable in the years ahead. In 1940, as Germany's Wehrmacht swept across Western Europe, Juan attempted to offer his services to British intelligence. It was a bold move, but at first, it was met with skepticism. The British, wary of potential double agents, rejected him outright. Undeterred, Juan returned to civilian life, but his mind never ceased considering the ways he might strike a blow against the Nazis, even from the shadows. It was in this period of apparent inactivity that Juan conceived an idea that would alter the course of the war. If he could create the illusion of a network of spies within Nazi-occupied Europe, feeding false intelligence to Berlin, he could manipulate German strategy on a grand scale. But such an endeavor required audacity, meticulous planning, and an intimate understanding of human psychology. Juan understood that success would hinge not on the volume of information he provided, but on its credibility, the subtle mixture of truth and fabrication that would convince even the most skeptical German officers. Juan adopted the codename Garbo, a nod to the famous Hollywood actress Greta Garbo, whose performances captivated audiences with a deceptive authenticity. With this new identity, he began crafting a network of fictional agents, each with their own backstory, covering a patchwork of locations across Europe. Letters, radio transmissions, and fabricated reports began to flow, meticulously designed to appear genuine. Juan had no real agents at his disposal, each report was the work of his own hand, yet to the Germans, the intelligence appeared vast, diverse, and reliable. By 1942, Garbo's reputation had grown within the German intelligence apparatus. The Abwehr, charged with espionage and counterintelligence, had little reason to doubt him. Juan's careful blending of minor truths with carefully constructed falsehoods created a mirror in which the Germans saw what they wanted to see. His intelligence appeared so authentic that German officers began citing it in their strategic deliberations. Every minor success reinforced their trust, and every seemingly small piece of information lent credibility to the larger narrative he was constructing. It was within this framework that Operation Fortitude would take shape, the elaborate Allied deception designed to ensure the success of the Normandy landings. The objective was simple yet profoundly risky: convince the Germans that the Allies' true invasion target was the Pas de Calais, rather than Normandy, drawing their forces away from the beaches where the D-Day landings would eventually take place. Fortitude was a colossal gamble, requiring coordination across intelligence, military planning, and psychological manipulation. It demanded the creation not just of a believable threat, but of an entire phantom army, complete with inflatable tanks, dummy landing craft, and radio chatter suggesting troop movements that existed only in the imagination of the enemy. Juan Garbo became the linchpin of this deception. He was the thread that tied together an intricate tapestry of lies, feeding Berlin carefully crafted intelligence that reinforced the illusion of a massive Allied build-up at Calais. Each letter he sent, each report he transmitted via his clandestine radio operations, was a step in a delicate dance. He needed the Germans to believe in the strength and imminence of the imaginary forces, while simultaneously maintaining the secrecy of the real invasion plans. The Germans, naturally cautious and increasingly paranoid as the war dragged on, scrutinized every piece of intelligence they received. Yet Garbo's work was so meticulous, so convincingly human in its errors and details, that it penetrated even the layers of skepticism. He introduced minor, believable inconsistencies in his reports, small delays, partial successes, exaggerated enemy strengths, mimicking the imperfections inherent in any real spy network. These touches lent an authenticity that would become his greatest weapon. The stakes could not have been higher. The success of D-Day depended not just on the courage of the soldiers storming the beaches of Normandy, but on the illusion Garbo created thousands of miles away. German commanders, convinced by his fabrications, retained significant forces at Calais, awaiting an invasion that would never come. In doing so, they weakened their ability to respond to the actual landings, unknowingly tilting the balance in favor of the Allies. Every day Garbo spent maintaining his network was a day the lives of thousands of soldiers were potentially saved. Every carefully drafted report was a thread in a vast web of survival and victory. Garbo's ingenuity extended beyond mere writing. He coordinated with British intelligence to simulate the transmission of messages from his fictitious agents, varying the timing, format, and style to mimic real communications under wartime conditions. He fabricated local contacts, created imaginary sabotage reports, and even included mundane details, weather, local events, and minor skirmishes to convince German analysts that his network was rooted in reality. It was not enough to invent agents, he had to make them alive in the minds of those who scrutinized them, tangible enough that the Germans could not dismiss them without risking the appearance of incompetence. In late 1943, as planning for Operation Overlord intensified, Garbo's reports became increasingly critical. He provided detailed assessments of supposed Allied troop dispositions, supply movements, and operational intentions. Each piece of intelligence reinforced the notion that the main assault would occur at Calais. By mixing real information, gleaned from newspapers, public broadcasts, and subtle observation, with invented details, he created a narrative that the Germans found compelling and credible. One of Garbo's most remarkable achievements was the precision with which he understood the psychology of the German High Command. He did not merely feed them false information, he guided their expectations, creating confirmation biases that made them more likely to believe what he wished them to believe. When German generals debated the likely landing sites, they cited his intelligence as if it were eyewitness testimony. His reports shaped their strategic deliberations, not by force, but by the subtle persuasion of perceived authority and reliability. The broader scope of Operation Fortitude amplified Garbo's effectiveness. Alongside dummy armies and phantom divisions, his network of fictitious spies added layers of credibility to the Allied deception. Reports of imminent attacks, logistical movements, and local resistance activities painted a complex picture of Allied intentions, suggesting a massive force poised at Calais. Meanwhile, the real preparations for Normandy proceeded largely unobserved. The combination of tangible, visible preparations and the invisible web of Garbo's intelligence created a convincing illusion so complete that even seasoned German officers were deceived. Amid this intricate web of deceit, Garbo remained acutely aware of the personal danger he faced. The slightest misstep, a misdated report, a suspicious letter, a traceable error, could have exposed him as a double agent. The consequences would have been fatal. Yet he persisted, motivated not by glory or recognition, but by a quiet sense of duty. He understood that his work, invisible though it was, had the potential to save lives and alter the course of history. In this recognition lay a profound courage, one that required intellect, restraint, and unwavering resolve. By early 1944, the Germans were fully ensnared by Garbo's deception. Troops were concentrated at Calais, reserves were held in expectation of a phantom invasion, and critical strategic decisions were made based on intelligence that existed only in the mind of one man and the carefully constructed personas he maintained. The Normandy beaches, meanwhile, were lightly defended relative to the threat the Allies actually faced, an imbalance that would prove decisive on June 6, 1944. Garbo had created a vacuum of belief that allowed history to pivot. It is important to recognize that Garbo's achievement was not merely technical, it was profoundly human. His success relied on empathy, understanding, and intuition. He needed to anticipate how real people, the German officers reading his reports, would react to every piece of information. Every invented agent had a personality, a style of reporting, even habits and preferences that mirrored the quirks of real operatives. In this way, Garbo's fiction became indistinguishable from reality, demonstrating a remarkable comprehension of human psychology rarely matched in the annals of warfare. One of the most striking elements of Garbo's story is the absence of violence in his contribution. Unlike the soldiers storming Omaha or Utah beaches, he wielded no weapon. He took no enemy lives, yet his actions shaped the outcomes of battles, influenced the allocation of troops, and arguably shortened the war in Western Europe. In an era defined by bloodshed and destruction, the power of intellect, patience, and cunning proved equally formidable. It is a reminder that warfare is not only fought on battlefields, but also in the shadows of perception, deception, and strategy. The Germans, convinced by his reports, even recommended awarding honors to Garbo for his supposed efforts on their behalf. This extraordinary irony underscored the perfection of his deception. The enemy celebrated the very man orchestrating their strategic errors. In a world consumed by suspicion, paranoia, and death, Juan Pujol Garcia had created an invisible shield, a guardian of Allied lives, wielded through wit, persistence, and the quiet art of subterfuge. As the date of the Normandy invasion approached, the tension surrounding Garbo's role escalated. Every message, every report, every transmission carried the weight of thousands of lives. The real soldiers, landing craft crews, paratroopers, and infantrymen would rely on the enemy's misjudgments to survive. Juan worked tirelessly, crafting the final sequences of misinformation that would solidify German expectations of an imminent Calais invasion. In doing so, he became the silent architect of an outcome upon which the fate of nations hung precariously. When D-Day finally arrived on June 6, 1944, the results of Garbo's labor became immediately evident. German forces at Normandy faced the initial assault with less than optimal strength, hampered by the belief that the main attack would occur elsewhere. His network of fictitious agents had done its work. Berlin's attention was focused on a threat that did not exist, while the real assault forged a foothold on the beaches of Normandy. The invasion succeeded in part because of what never happened, the movement of forces in response to false intelligence that Juan alone had manufactured. To truly grasp the magnitude of Garbo's accomplishment, one must consider the stakes, the complexity, and the precision required. He had managed, almost single-handedly, to convince an entire nation of an imaginary threat, manipulating strategic decisions at the highest levels without ever setting foot on a battlefield. It was a feat that demanded courage, intellect, and a mastery of human psychology unparalleled in wartime espionage. In a conflict defined by overwhelming violence, Juan Pujol Garcia demonstrated that subtlety, creativity, and moral courage could wield power as effectively as any gun or bomb. Even after the war, Garbo's contributions remained shrouded in secrecy for many years, known only to a select circle within British intelligence. The world celebrated generals and soldiers, tanks and planes, but the man who had shaped entire strategies through deception alone remained largely invisible. Yet those who understand the history of D-Day recognize that without Garbo, the cost in lives could have been far higher, the outcome far less certain. His story is a testament to the quiet heroism of those who fight not with weapons, but with minds sharpened to the edge of ingenuity and moral resolve. The morning of June 7, 1944, dawned over the English Channel with a quiet almost incongruous against the chaos that had unfolded the day before. Across the sea, the Normandy beaches bore the fresh marks of history in the making, sun turned to churned mud, craters smudged with the remnants of explosions, and the echo of gunfire still lingering faintly in the wind. Yet, far from the battlefield, thousands of miles away, another kind of struggle continued, less visible but no less consequential. Juan Pujol Garcia, known to the Germans as Arabelle and to the British as Garbo, remained at his post, crafting illusions that would dictate enemy decisions in the days, weeks, and even months to come. While the Allied armies pressed inland, Garbo's letters, coded messages, and radio transmissions continued to flow into Berlin. The German High Command, still obsessed with the threat to the Pas de Calais, remained largely immobilized. Entire divisions, fresh from strategic reserves, lingered at Calais under the false impression that an overwhelming Allied invasion was imminent. Hitler, notoriously obstinate in his decision-making, was persuaded by Garbo's meticulous intelligence that Normandy was merely a diversion, a feint designed to draw German attention and resources. It was a triumph of subtle manipulation. The enemy, convinced of the wrong threat, became an unwitting participant in the Allied victory. Garbo's brilliance lay not only in the content of his reports, but in the artistry of their delivery. He understood the rhythms of German intelligence, the habits of officers, and the cadence that lent credibility to communication. Reports arrived in carefully staggered intervals, mimicking the operational realities of a sprawling spy network. Minor inconsistencies were intentionally inserted, creating the impression of independent agents each with unique perspectives and flaws. Every detail was calculated, the rhythm of life within a fictional network was simulated so precisely that even the most skeptical analysts could not discern fabrication. As Allied forces solidified their foothold in Normandy, Garbo shifted his focus to reinforcing the illusion of imminent Calais landings. He fabricated news of phantom reconnaissance operations, detailing imaginary troop movements, supply depots, and sabotage attempts. These reports included personal touches, agents reporting mundane events, observations of local populations, and minor skirmishes that never occurred. To German officers, the intelligence was alive, tangible, and operationally significant. In reality, each word, each observation, was born entirely in Garbo's mind, a testament to his creativity and analytical acuity. The German response to Garbo's work was immediate and telling. Troop deployments remained frozen at Calais, the panzer divisions poised to repel an invasion that would never come. Hitler, famously obsessive about the Pas de Calais, interpreted Garbo's intelligence as further confirmation of his strategic assumptions. The Wehrmacht's high command debated, analyzed, and ultimately deferred, their choices dictated by a phantom hand. In a war dominated by physical force, the weight of illusion had become equally decisive. Garbo's letters had reshaped reality itself, redirecting men and material by the mere power of persuasion. But success in deception carried with it tremendous personal risk. Garbo's position was extraordinarily precarious. The Germans had no reason to suspect duplicity, yet any misstep, a misdated letter, an inconsistent report, a lapse in coding, could have resulted in immediate execution. The pressure was immense, and the stakes were existential. Unlike soldiers on the front lines, Garbo could not rely on comrades to shield him. His survival depended entirely on skill, foresight, and unwavering discipline. Each message, each fabricated agent, each phantom operation was a thread, pull the wrong one, and the entire network could unravel catastrophically. Despite the danger, Garbo found ways to humanize his intelligence. He introduced agents with personalities, habits, and quirks, all carefully designed to resonate with German expectations of operatives in occupied Europe. Some agents were cautious, others bold, some reported successes, others admitted failures. This subtle variation was essential. It created a narrative rhythm that mirrored reality, fostering trust in the minds of German analysts. By making his fiction believable on an emotional and psychological level, Garbo ensured that Berlin treated his intelligence as authentic. As July approached, the focus of Garbo's work shifted toward sustaining German confusion and preventing reinforcement of Normandy. He exploited the natural tendencies of the German command structure, particularly the influence of fear and caution. Reports suggested that Allied forces were engaged in ongoing preparation for a major strike on Calais, citing fabricated reconnaissance and supply movements. These communications emphasized urgency, danger, and operational detail, compelling German commanders to maintain positions far from the real front. In this way, Garbo's work extended the protective shadow over Normandy, providing crucial breathing space for Allied forces to consolidate their positions and advance inland. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Garbo's contribution was its indirect effect on battlefield dynamics. The Allies had prepared meticulously, yet without the ability to predict enemy dispositions, even the best-laid plans could falter. Garbo's deception shifted the balance in favor of the attackers by manipulating the enemy's perception of risk. German forces, bound by false intelligence, reacted predictably, and in doing so, facilitated the progress of the actual invasion. Every radio message, every letter, every invented agent had a tangible impact on real events, influencing the allocation of armored divisions, the timing of reinforcements, and the operational readiness of units facing the beaches of Normandy. Garbo's work was far from solitary. He maintained constant communication with British intelligence, receiving guidance and feedback while simultaneously exercising considerable autonomy. This collaboration required discretion, timing, and careful judgment. British officers recognized his genius but understood that operational success depended on maintaining the credibility of Garbo's persona with the enemy. The delicate interplay between agent and handler became an intricate dance, requiring mutual trust and shared understanding of the stakes. Every decision carried historical weight, for miscalculation could cost thousands of lives and potentially compromise the entire invasion effort. Amid these high-stakes operations, Garbo faced personal challenges. His life as a double agent required concealment, secrecy, and constant vigilance. Every interaction, every routine activity had to be calculated to avoid exposing his true loyalties. The psychological burden was immense. He could not rely on ordinary social relationships for support. His friends and family remained unaware of the extent of his involvement. Loneliness, isolation, and anxiety were constant companions, yet he endured, driven by a profound sense of purpose. In this quiet endurance, he demonstrated a form of heroism rarely recognized, a heroism defined by intellect, patience, and moral resolve rather than physical valor. Garbo's ingenuity was matched by his understanding of timing. Intelligence is not merely about accuracy, it is about delivering the right message at the right moment. He calibrated every transmission to reinforce ongoing German beliefs, sustaining the illusion of imminent Calais operations even as Normandy forces advanced. He accounted for German skepticism, delayed communications, and potential inconsistencies, ensuring that every report appeared plausible. The result was an intricate choreography of perception, a symphony of misinformation orchestrated by a single mind. One example of this precision was Garbo's manipulation of German expectations regarding Allied air power. By reporting phantom reconnaissance flights and fictitious paratrooper operations, he created a sense of omnipresent threat that never materialized. The Germans responded predictably, dispersing forces and reinforcing areas that were strategically irrelevant. In this way, the battlefield itself became a reflection of his deception, a landscape shaped not by the movement of armies but by the contours of belief and expectation. The months following D-Day were marked by sustained tension and calculated risk. Garbo continued to feed false intelligence, guiding German movements and ensuring that reinforcements did not jeopardize Allied operations. Each report was carefully crafted to maintain credibility, blending reality and invention. News of minor Allied advances, simulated sabotage activities, and local resistance reports added layers of authenticity. German officers, analyzing the flow of information, remained convinced of an imminent threat at Calais. Garbo's phantom agents appeared as real as any soldier on the front, each report reinforcing the illusion and extending the protective shadow over the true invasion. It is crucial to appreciate the scope of Garbo's achievement. In a war defined by unprecedented violence and industrial-scale destruction, a single man, armed only with intellect and creativity, influenced the decisions of generals, the deployment of divisions, and the course of battles. He altered the trajectory of history without ever leaving the safety of his office, without firing a single shot, and without shedding blood. The invisible hand of deception became a decisive instrument, demonstrating the profound power of strategy, psychology, and moral courage. Garbo's influence extended even beyond the immediate operational context. By convincing German high command that the Normandy invasion was a diversion, he facilitated not only the initial success of D-Day but also the subsequent Allied breakout from the beaches and push across France. The liberation of Europe, accelerated and aided by his deception, was in part a product of his imagination and skill. In the shadows of history, his work reshaped the battlefield, proving that the mind can be as potent a weapon as any artillery piece. Even as the war drew toward its climax, Garbo faced challenges in maintaining his cover. His network required constant attention. German intelligence occasionally expressed suspicion, questioned inconsistencies, and demanded additional verification. Each inquiry demanded careful responses, balancing authenticity with operational necessity. The psychological strain was relentless, yet Garbo persisted, guided by principle and by the understanding that lives depended on his discretion. His work exemplified the intersection of intellect, courage, and moral responsibility, qualities that remain rare and exceptional even in times of peace. The conclusion of Garbo's wartime service was marked by extraordinary irony. After the liberation of Europe and the defeat of Nazi Germany, his efforts remained largely unrecognized publicly. The world celebrated generals, soldiers, and tanks, while the man who had orchestrated crucial elements of deception remained hidden, known only to a select few within British intelligence. Yet the historical record would eventually acknowledge his singular contribution, a testament to the effectiveness of strategic intelligence, the subtle art of deception, and the enduring power of human ingenuity. Garbo's legacy is a profound reminder of the multiple dimensions of warfare. While guns, tanks, and planes dominate popular imagination, the war was also fought in minds and perceptions. He demonstrated that courage is not only the act of facing bullets and bombs but also the resolve to wield intellect against overwhelming odds, to manipulate, persuade, and protect unseen bystanders. The lives saved, the battles influenced, and the outcomes shaped were a direct result of his skill and dedication. Even today, the story of Juan Pujol Garcia inspires reflection. His life challenges conventional definitions of heroism, illustrating that impact can be achieved without violence, that one person can alter the course of history with creativity, intelligence, and moral clarity. In a world frequently focused on the tangible, the physical, and the immediate, his example illuminates the enduring significance of subtlety, patience, and strategic thought. He is a figure whose deeds invite admiration not for spectacle but for the quiet, profound influence they exerted. The ethical dimension of Garbo's work is equally compelling. In deceiving the enemy, he saved countless lives and contributed to a swifter Allied victory. Yet he did so with precision, care, and a conscious avoidance of unnecessary harm. His operations exemplify a form of moral warfare where intellect serves humanity rather than destruction. In this, Garbo stands apart, embodying the potential for individual agency to act decisively, ethically, and meaningfully even within the context of mass conflict. The post-war period saw Garbo retreating from public life. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he did not seek fame or fortune. He emigrated to Venezuela, living quietly, blending into civilian life. For years, his role remained classified, known only to those who had orchestrated the intelligence operations. Yet his story, once revealed, resonated profoundly, offering insight into the hidden layers of World War II strategy and the extraordinary individuals whose contributions shaped history without the limelight. His methods remain a subject of study for intelligence professionals and historians alike. The principles of trust, believability, timing, and psychological manipulation underpin modern espionage, yet Garbo executed them with a creativity and precision that remains unmatched. His fictional agents, carefully constructed narratives, and meticulous timing constitute a case study in the art of strategic deception, a reminder that in warfare, perception often dictates reality. Ultimately, Juan Pujol Garcia's story is a testament to the enduring power of human intellect and moral courage. He was a man of ordinary beginnings who, through ingenuity and perseverance, became a guardian of thousands, shaping the course of history through unseen actions. His life exemplifies the impact of one individual operating at the nexus of strategy, deception, and morality, offering a model of heroism that transcends the battlefield. As we reflect on the events of D-Day and the broader context of World War II, Garbo's contribution challenges us to consider the many dimensions of influence, the unseen forces that shape outcomes, and the profound consequences of intelligence, insight, and ethical ingenuity. His life reminds us that history is not only written by those who wield swords or guns, but also by those who understand the mind, manipulate perception, and act with courage when the stakes are immeasurably high.